The HKTDC Hong Kong Book Fair returns to the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre on July 21st. In terms of visitor numbers, this 7-day event is the world's largest Chinese language book fair. But this year, it's turning a new page with a hugely expanded English offering. The fair is attracting some of the world's finest English authors, including Frederick Forsyth, who wrote The Day of the Jackal. He'll be joining a forum in Hong Kong moderated by businessman and author Sir David Tang, who recently caught up with him in London.
Freddie, you're coming out to Hong Kong. We're greatly looking forward to seeing you there. I knew you through your books before I knew you. The Day of the Jackal, of course, is the very famous one, which turned into a bestseller and a gripping film. Was that your first novel?
It was indeed, yeah.
How did you manage to get, were you absolutely delighted when it became a bestseller?
I was puzzled and astounded because I never presumed it would be. I just simply had this idea in my head from 1963 onwards. I got on with my life and my career, which was then foreign correspondent. And I don't know why, but I just mulled it over as a sort of maybe occasional, why not kind of idea. And I never thought to write it until 1970. So for 7 years, it was somewhere in there. And then I found myself back from a place which most young people have now forgotten, called Biafra, which was eastern Nigeria, which rose against the federal government, and there was a civil war. And I was in the middle of that, and I came back from that. Christmas 1969, literally broke, without a job, without prospect of a job, without a flat, without a car, without any savings. And I thought, what do I do now? I know. How naive can you be? I'll write a novel and make some money. Of course, I have to say, if you want to make some money, do not write a novel. Its chances are they do.
Was your script turned down by publishers?
The first manuscript, which was actually turned out to be the only manuscript, whereas it was turned down by 4. And the 5th took it.
There's been no looking back since that first novel, because you've brought out bestseller after bestseller. When you write, do you have to think to yourself that you've got to assign a period of time during which there will be no interruption?
Oh, only, yes. The whole writing business is 3 parts. It's thinking of the story, researching the facts as far as they can be ascertained, and then the writing. The 3rd section, yes, that is complete quiet. And the way I do it is, 1, I live in the country. 2, so I don't have the traffic noise of cities. 2, I have a converted barn, which was once where they store the hay, and now I write in it.
Did you write longhand or computer?
No, I type. I'm halfway between the longhand writer, which is John le Carré, I think he's a longhand writer. Geoffrey Archer writes longhand, and the computer nerd. I'm between the 2. I still, like a foreign correspondent, write with a typewriter, which everyone laughs at. And
a manual typewriter?
Yes, a manual. Well, electric, but yes. 2 forefingers. Never.
Tipex.
Never managed.
Tipex?
When I make a mistake, Tipex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not very often.
Well.
Do you have to, when you finish, how much polishing do you have to do? Do you just leave it?
Not very much. Not very much. I tend to research so intensively that there shouldn't be much wrong, except the occasional spelling mistake. And people say, well, why don't you have a word processor? Then you could correct your spelling mistakes, to which I reply, look, there are 2 charming ladies who need the job, yes. And they're at my publisher's house, so why should I take their job away?
Yes.
So they do all the correcting of spelling mistakes. And then we have, hopefully, a finished manuscript.
How long does it take you usually to write a book?
I'm fast because I tend to write, although with 2 fingers, I tend to write about 6 hours a day. I write 10 pages a day, which is about 2,500 words a day. And therefore, in 40 days, I can do my entire novel. But then you must remember, it's not composing. I've already composed it. It's up here.
I see.
It's just putting that onto paper.
Now, your latest book is...
The Cobra.
The Cobra. That's very topical, isn't it?
Well, it is, actually, yes. I try not... I don't write about prehistory at all. Most of my stuff is set in our age, the modern age. And this particular story, the Cobra, of course, isn't a snake, it's a man. And it's the story of the notional destruction of the cocaine industry, which means Colombia, Bogota, Cartagena, and all the gangs who control cocaine.
But are your books translated into Chinese?
They are now. For many years, they weren't. But then I have an agency which was actually based in Japan originally, and then set up a Beijing office. And yes, I believe that there's an edition in Mandarin now.
Yes.
I think for the first time. Whether this is the first book or the second book, I suspect one or two maybe are indeed printed. And then they go back into the backlist, you see, and go back to the Jackal.
How much would you say the real world, the real covert world, in relation to your fiction, is your novel more far-fetched, or is reality more far-fetched?
Well, I mean, I hand on heart, I would say I do all I can to make it as accurate as possible. Occasionally, I think I can say I reveal, but I never reveal what I might call ongoing secret practice, but sometimes historical, what they did and got away with, some of them.
Have you been ever telephoned in the middle of the night, or a letter asking you to meet somebody whom you've never met before?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes,
Yes. That's not a problem. But it's not usually the middle of the night. It's very civilized. Would you care to join me and my friend for lunch? So I know the guy who's the friend, or the friend turns out to be a spook, who says, look, we'd be very grateful. They're not that heavy. They say, we'd be very grateful if you would just actually kill this passage, because actually that's exactly what we're doing, and it's too accurate.
Do you have any desire to write books which is not in a genre of spying, covert operation, assassinations?
Well, I have done. I wrote 10 short stories once under the collective title No Comebacks. I did 5 short stories under the collective title The Veteran.
Yes.
And I did a book about a pilot being lost over the North Sea,
yes,
who was called the Shepherd.
Yes.
And then once, at the suggestion and behest of Andrew Lloyd Webber, I wrote a sequel to The Phantom of the Opera. So yes, I do occasionally wander off the beaten
no
track.
romance.
Of spy. I tend to avoid romance. One, because I'm very bad at it. And if you want to know why, you'd have to ask my wife. But broadly speaking, I also feel when they say, well, why don't you ever have, sex and love affairs in your books? I say, well, unless it's actually necessary for the plot, it's an aberration, and you take the reader away from what's happening.
Do you think James Bond is a bit far-fetched with all that feminine sexuality?
Well, of course, it was designed to be pure escapism. Yes. And it is pure escapism because it's completely divorced from reality.
Last question. Do you think there is a lot of covert operations in China?
Oh, yes. The Chinese, I mean, forgive my saying so, but the Chinese were doing this, doing undercover work. When we Europeans are running around in bearskins and war paint, and people like Sun Tzu and the Bing Fa,
yes,
who wrote The Art of War, which we still refer to today in our colleges here,
yes,
were way ahead of the West long ago in terms of subtlety, planning, plotting, doing down your enemy. This is what it's all about. And yes, the Chinese were there, as in most things, way before the West.
Well, Freddie, I hope that you will have a good time when you come to Hong Kong. We much look forward to it, and I hope that, as I said, you'll tell us some of your secrets, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be very curious about your life and your imagination and how you actually translate those ideas into print.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.